without further ado, let's get straight into the first topic. And, cast your mind back 2 weeks ago with Antonio Conte did that crazy press conference, that crazy rant on the players, scathing attack on the players. We all thought, Matt, maybe we might see a bit of a reaction from the players after that scathing rant, but we did not see that. So did the players prove Antonio Conte right at the Everton performance? We'll start with you, Jory.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you have to say so, and I would actually go so far to say that actually the first half was the reaction, and we're now at a point where this is what a reaction looks like. This is the level of commitment, energy, skill that a reaction, produces, and then once again, like I think the most clear thing that was proven in that game was as soon as something, any stakes in the game, they crumbled, and they did it to a level that I don't think any of us, not even the most cynical fans about the squad, thought they would do it in this extreme manner that they actually did it. So yes, I would say it was not only proven, it was hammered home, really.
Yeah. Look, I can't disagree with that. I think absolutely spot on. I think they were completely proved right. But Ariane, what's your thinking behind it? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely the players crumpled under the pressure, and like I said in the pre-match show. Sometimes they don't stumble. They fell over. They stumbled. They rolled down the hill. I don't know what other descriptions there are of what happened on Monday. I think you can definitely say that these players crumbled under the slightest bit of pressure against Everton, and that pressure being holding a lead against 10-man Everton. There are many lows at this club. This is one of the lowest I've experienced. 10-man Everton fighting for relegation, and I would say we looked like the team that was managed by Sean Dyche, but that would be an insult to Sean Dyche because his team looks so organized. His team always looks so like everyone knows what their job is. All of our players look confused. They look completely lackluster. No one looks like they know what they're doing. They want to be there. They know why they're even there. That's like none of them really look like they have a clue as to what's happening. At least Sean Dyche's team looked like they even wanted to be on the field. At least you could say that, and they proved it up into the 91st minute or whatever. I think Conte definitely showed that these players under pressure don't really have the cutting edge. What I think was the notable thing about the press conference, though, and I mean, I know this isn't really part of the question necessarily, but my whole issue with the press conference wasn't necessarily what he said, it's why he said it. Because I don't think he said it out of good faith for Spurs. That's always been my issue with that conference. I think that whole rant was out of self-preservation. And because the thing is, Conte's time at Spurs, it's not been, horrible the whole time or fantastic the whole time, but towards this end when things have gone wrong, a lot of us point blame at the players, and very rightfully so. But I think one thing Conte really failed to do is acknowledge his own shortcomings, which he did have a lot this season, and it really just seemed to me like that rant was something he was putting in his back pocket for when things went bad, and they did go bad, and he basically pointed fingers at everybody except for himself, and that's just what I didn't appreciate. But I don't think he said anything bad, and I mean, on Monday it got proven everything he said was absolutely spot on. It was more about what he didn't say that kind of stuck with, that kind of irked me. That's been my criticism of that conference, but I mean, everything he said was spot on 100%.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair criticism, to be honest, and I think when you're thinking about the comments and why he said it, to me, I think it's pretty much irrelevant why he said it, because everything he said was still absolutely spot on. So for me, it doesn't really matter for the reasons why or what he did and what he didn't say. But not only for me did it seem like we were the Sean Dyche team and we were playing against a much better side, it also seemed to me when they were down to 10 men. We were the ones down to 9 men, never mind 10 men. It seemed like they were overloading us in areas of the pitch where we had an extra man them. It just didn't make sense to me. But what's your take on this topic, Sim?
Yeah, I think I think Jory's absolutely right. It wasn't just justify. He didn't just justify Conte's comments. They were doubled down on, I think, on Monday. Now, I think it was an even worse capitulation than the game against Southampton, which Conte was going mad after. In the situation we were in, we were literally gift wrapped a game. We were literally gift wrapped 3 points on a play, to be honest. Like, the game fell into our hands. We couldn't have wished to be in a better situation than being. Yeah, we couldn't have wished to being given a silver spoon as well. Like, you couldn't have wished of a better situation to be in than 1-0 up against 10-man Everton team who aren't known for like their good possession football, and yet for the last 20 minutes we couldn't hold on to the ball for love nor money, and they, as you're absolutely right, they were overloading us, they were outrunning us. We were the ones hoofing the ball clear, like we had 10 men and like to no one, and we were like parking the bus and panicking, and we should have been composed, looking for that second goal, seeing the game out, making sure that we kept possession and made Everton come and chase us, as opposed to just hoofing the ball whenever we got it because we were scared of having the ball. And that goes to what exactly Conte was saying about this team not wanting to play under pressure, not wanting to play under stress. They seem to panic. They don't like it. And that's a whole mentality thing, because a lot of the players should be more than good enough to keep possession in that situation. Of course they should. They should have the mentality and the know-how to keep the ball down, calm down when we have possession, just look for the free man. We're the ones with an extra man. Look for the free man each time. And it was unbelievable. It looked like Everton were the ones who had the free man each time instead of us. And it was absolutely crazy. So Conte, for sure, was probably in Italy, had his feet up, had some sunglasses on, smoking a big cigar with a glass of wine in his hand, absolutely vindicated with his comments, because this was, don't get it wrong, this was the Tottenham players had 2 weeks to mull over those words. They had 2 weeks to, a lot of them reacted in the media saying, a lot of them, I know they didn't really come out directly, but, they hinted at, not being happy with what Conte had said. And a lot of them kind of hinting that they thought Conte was wrong and they shouldn't have been called out like that. So they had a long time to think over what he had to say and respond to it. And this was their right of reply in a way. This was their response to what Conte had to say, and this was their chance to show them, look, we're not the problem. Conte was the issue, by and large, and he is absolutely wrong in what he said. And if this was their reply, I mean, it's absolutely laughable that they thought that they thought this was the correct response. I mean, they completely shat the bed. Conte, I heard the commentators on the commentators were kind of, in a way, blaming Conte for this happening, because they were saying that Conte hammered home the message so much that maybe the players started to believe it. But I don't.
Should start to believe it. Because 100%.
It's absolutely exactly. And look, I don't think Stellini helped the situation, because I do think his substitutions definitely spread the negativity around the team. When he should have been making subs to go for the second goal and kill off the game, he was kind of almost making subs to make sure that we're battening down the hatches and like negative subs, basically. Now, the Sanchez sub was basically because they were looking more and more dangerous from set pieces, and Sanchez is probably a more physical player than Longley. But then what happened was Sanchez got the ball and just continuously gave it away and put us under pressure.
You're trying to build out the back. You're trying to keep the ball, and you bring on Davinson Sanchez. I mean, where is the logic in that? That must be one. That must be one of the worst substitutions in history. Seriously.
Yeah.
That is on par with Lucas Bergman for Lucas. That is on par.
Go on, Jory.
I mean, I was going to say, the logic should be Clement was Longley was on a yellow card and stuff like that, which would be logical if you were presented with a choice other than Davinson Sanchez. If that's your choice, you take your chance with the yellow card, and just drive the game out, But I would like to also comment in terms of Arian saying Conte kind of self-preservation. I do agree with that in some way, but the way I don't quite see it as self-preservation, even though I do absolutely see it as Conte putting distance between him and the board and the squad mainly. But at the same time, he closed the distance between him and the fans like us who have who are really bleeding for the bats. I felt Conte put himself in the camp of the bats, which is a minority fan base, I feel like now. And Conte, and that's it. The rest, we've talked about it many times. It's about maybe the commercialization of the culture and all of that. I don't want to go into that, but I felt like Conte, yes, was brand preserving, but I also know Conte is like when Conte is Tottenham, he is definitely all in with the bats. He doesn't give himself any excuses in that way. And so I felt there was a little bit more. That was kind of the dividing line that I saw, because he definitely didn't put distance between me, I think, as a fan, and himself. Actually, he said he took the fight and said, me as a fan deserve better than this. You guys that pay the season tickets deserve better, and so on. And this is standing gripe with we've been saying it for years. So I feel like, and I'm sure that Conte at some point will be happy to acknowledge his own failures in it, but that's the kind of guy he is. At that moment, he needed to do that call out, I feel, and he did it the right way. But I won't disagree with the brand preservation. But I mean, there's nothing to preserve a brand like winning endless titles like this guy has done. So there's really no argument to be had. He's a winner. This club has proven a 20 years losing culture, so we don't need really to spend too much time on it. But yeah, it was definitely, talk about prophetic words. Those were prophetic words for sure, So
just to elaborate on that point, to ask Aaron a question: is it ever okay, under any circumstance, for a manager to be be in self-preservation mode, or is it always wrong in any situation?
Okay, well, when you put it like that, then I'm never going to give absolutes, because that could, if I say never or always, then that's always going to get put into some weird.
I'm trying to put you in a corner, Ariane.
Situation I didn't mean. But I think what Conte did, my issue with what Conte did, and Jory mentioned that like he felt like he closed the distance between him and fans. I kind of see that as like you taking the bait, right? Because what Conte did as part of his whole self-preservation scheme was, look, the thing is, Conte was not the problem at Spurs. We all know what the problem at Spurs is. None of us need to sit here and because all four of us know exactly what the problem at Spurs is. But a problem at Spurs is a myriad of things. It's certain players, it's certain board members, it's certain coaches, coaching staff, medical staff. There's a bunch of things. Conte was a problem. That's what I wholeheartedly believe. He was a problem. For a myriad, it was not even all that was down to his fault, but he was a problem. It was a bad fit. Pretty much every single journalist used the exact same words as an unhappy marriage, which I found kind of weird, but all of them pretty much said that, and it was. The reason for that is because Conte has tactics that don't work with the fan base typically, and he has methods that don't work with this squad of players, and they don't, especially this season. This season especially, we've looked far worse than we did last season, and that is because Conte has done certain things that just haven't fit the squad. His fitness approach has caused us multiple injuries, and we are feeling that right now, especially with the death of Gianpiero Montrone, who was working with Conte for 18 years mitigating these problems, especially ever since his death. That's really when our season fell apart, because you have not only like the moral weight of that, you have literally the physiological weight of having one of the most experienced sports coaches physical coaches under Conte not know how to control Conte's squad fitness-wise, and instead of managing the squad, Conte ran these players into the ground, and we have players like Bissouma who have a stress fracture, we have players like Bentang who did their ACL, and ACLs are likelier if you're fatigued. You have Lloris who had a knee problem as well. You had Emerson who got injured at international break. You have a lot of these injuries that could have maybe been prevented if Conte maybe rotated the squad a little bit more, crying out for a forward option all summer and getting Richarlison. We fucking barely used them after Sonny's been dropping disaster class after disaster class after disaster class. So there's things that Conte just didn't do that were not acknowledged by him, and that's something that really was my issue, because he did things wrong and he never took responsibility for them. He never, like with Richarlison, he was just like, oh, he'll play when he plays, and he played him next game and he was fucking brilliant. So it's like, it's like, it's kind of, you're shooting yourself in the foot there when you're saying, oh, he's not ready, and then, oh, it turns out next game he's ready. What a brilliant coincidence that is. And also, another thing that's flying, and he's saying these players don't like to play under pressure. All of us know these players have crumbled under pressure many, many, many times during our time as supporting this club. They've, Champions League final, Carabao Cup final, pretty much any semifinal. There's been a lot of moments where these players have crumbled under the pressure. But last season we were under immense pressure for pretty much ever since Conte was in, and we performed brilliantly to get fourth place. That's the fact. We were sensational in Conte's run-in. We were picked up the third most points behind Liverpool and City, who basically didn't lose a game the whole time. We were excellent. These players played under that pressure to their credit at that time. And the difference personnel-wise was minimal.
Mm. No, I was just going to say there was also a period that our back line, for example, played the best it's done in years. And for me, I really can't put that anywhere other than Conte's methods and himself. There was Conte getting this squad to overperform to a level that we haven't seen for years. In terms of the injuries and stuff like that, I can see your point, but I would just point to Mourinho's tenure, and it was a similar story there, So I think it's more to do with the squad and the medical staff and just the general operations in the club than the actual manager. Mourinho was famously too lax on the conditioning and the strength training and stuff like that. And of course, we know Conte will always be hardcore in that manner. So I'm not going to argue that Basuma has had these problems because of it or not. I can easily imagine that, but I'm saying it's a big assumption to say that the whole injury crisis is down to Conte's way of working, because we had just as big an injury crisis under Mourinho, and Mourinho was like almost the opposite in terms of fitness and stuff like that, So I think that if you have to put it on something other than the players themselves, I think it's more likely to have a lot to do with our medical department and how we monitor these issues and just something in our workflow that's not really all right, So
it's not the job of the medical department to keep players fit. It's to recover them.
But they monitor their potential injuries and stuff like that, and so on.
But
Yeah,
going on to your point about Mourinho's injury crisis, that was really entirely different in nature to what Conte's suffering. Kane got injured because he had been on a run of seasons that he'd been getting injured every single season for 4 years, and he got a new physio at that time. That was entirely independent of what Mourinho did. Son broke his arm. That's just, what can you do?
No, his
as a result of that, we had
year. That's the same, That has nothing to do with Conte either.
Yeah, same thing. But that's not what I was referring to. I didn't use Son as an example when I was talking about Conte's injury crisis. I used Emerson. I used Basuma. I used the Bentancur. I used I didn't use Davies, but Davies. You have Son got two pretty unlucky bone injuries. So he broke his arm, and Kane had been getting injured every season, and that caused us to have a very because we never had good depth in forward. We had to start Lucas and Bergwijn every single game, and Lamela and Dele, and you're playing the same players in an 11 with Mourinho not having the option to rotate. His hand was forced into running these players into the ground. On the opposite side, Conte has depth in his squad, and he refuses to use it, and that's why our players are getting ran into the ground. We had a lot of players that we could have used this season, like Brian Hill, like Sarr, who's still barely getting minutes after being brilliant pretty much every time he's been on. I'm not going to use Spence. Let's be honest here. But and we had I'm just going to use those two right now, Sarr and Hill. That's two players. If Sarr got more minutes, would Bentancur be hurt right now? Who knows? Probably, maybe not, right? If Gil got minutes with Son and Kulusevski performing at a higher level, maybe. But or Richarlison even. If Richarlison played a bit more, would Kulusevski and Son have earned their spots and played a little bit better? Maybe. But Conte refused to do this, ran these players into the ground, and we have all these injury problems. And I was going back to what I was saying last season. You were saying Conte did something last season.
I don't agree with the whole
we can maybe
he refused to use players narrative. I think what Conte was trying to do and is always trying to do is to basically teach the first 11 exactly what he wants out of them. We were not there. They were still not even close to being, graduated from the Conte Academy, So then he uses all the time. He himself said, we need to have a bigger squad. We need to upgrade the whole squad. We need to be rotating to be able to compete on all these in all these competitions. I think once you're still struggling with the first 11, and Conte's method and idea is to get them physically and experience-wise up to scratch. He does that by putting them on the field again and again and again, and might be, for those particular players, might be too much stress. I'm not disagreeing with that, but I'm just saying Conte is just operating from his Conte manual, which has proven successful endless times, and I don't agree that he would keep out Gil or Danjuma or whoever. I think eventually, once the first 11 is settled and it simply just works like a Conte machine works, then he moves on to the next part of the squad and starts working on them. We saw that actually with, this is one of the big part of Emerson's miraculous progression, was that once Doherty wasn't an option anymore, he put all the effort into Emerson, and we saw a huge...
Emerson's revival came under Porro when he had competition.
Yes, Porro came in, but before Porro came in, we saw Emerson definitely do huge strides. We saw, I predicted this on this show. I said, I think now that we don't have Doherty, I think Conte is going to put a lot of work into Emerson to simply try and get it to another level, because it needs to be that. And then Porro came a little bit later, and of course the competition, I'm sure that lifts it even more. Let's hope so. That's the point of having two good players in every spot and all of that, But I simply, this is the way I see it. I'm not disagreeing with your assessment as such. I just see it as the first 11 was so far from being a finished project. So Conte is putting all the time, effort, and priority into working with the first 11. Once that's in a settled state, then he moves on to the rest of the squad. This is what he's done in other clubs. But he's usually gotten so big budgets to spend in the first window and stuff like that he gets much further with the first 11 quicker than he did here. So
I'm really not sure. Here's my problem with that whole assessment is that we did look like a finished product last season.
Yeah,
we looked like a proper Conte oiled machine. So I really am interested in knowing how a team can go from the third best team in the league in pretty much every metric stat-wise you can imagine, whether it be points per game, goals scored, and goals assists, like a proper football's played on grass, view, or if you want to get technical, look at expected goals, expected this, expected that, whatever. By any metric you can imagine, last season we looked twice the team we looked this season.
For sure.
So I want to know what that steep drop-off is when the only addition to the starting 11 was a Conte player in Ivan Perisic. Well, that's the only addition we had to our starting 11 from last season to this season.
But I would say,
in a way, Ariane, that addition, in a way, kind of, it was a Conte addition, but what it did to the team, if you think about it, is Sessegnon and Reguilon were much more defensive players, but that's not what he wants. He wants his wing-backs to be very offensive. What that's going to do is expose the back line even more, and that's essentially what happened when we put in a Perisic like that. He was obviously doing okay going forward, but he's a bit of a defensive liability, which he's been in all his teams. Yeah. But you need a strong defensive line that can cope with that, and we just didn't have that, and that led to a big decline. Maybe
bad management.
like I would say in terms of tactics, this is the same problem, even whether it be Pott's tactics or the many different flavors that Mourinho brought into. As always, when you have a slow, inept backline, they're not fast enough and they can't keep the ball. And they can't pass. They're not great passers either. Dyer, when he gets time, he's all right on the long passes, but that's about it, And of course, Romero is the exception. But when that's your defense, almost all successful tactics are going to fall down, because you constantly have to protect this back line. You have to double up with your midfield, you got to bring your wing backs back if you're playing a wing-back system and so on, So I really, for me, you could argue it's a chicken and egg situation, but for me, it's like the egg has been cracked a long time ago and it's spilled out there's no egg to be had here. There's only the chicken, and the chicken is all right. We need to get a new egg, and then we can start arguing, is it our brilliant players or is it our elite manager? But we're not arguing that. We have an elite manager and we've had many now. For me, Potts is borderline elite. He needs the silverware, but in terms of how he works, he's definitely one of the top managers out there.
The best of the three.
Well, I feel that way, but who's gonna tell me that our squad is world class elite or league winning or Champions League winning? They're not there, so we can agree on that. So so for me, it's a little bit, why are we trying to solve the problem of a shit squad by changing an elite manager? Why are we not just facing the facts that we need at least a really good squad for this elite manager?
And that's why the kind of abuse or the criticisms from the fan base on the managers don't really sit right with me, because it's the same kind of things that we're seeing over and over again, and it's the same kind of criticisms from the fan base that we're hearing over and over again for different particular managers. So whether Conte doesn't come out of this like a complete angel. Obviously he's done things wrong, and obviously his management wasn't completely perfect in this season because of what we went through. But the fact of the matter is, I think that maybe he got lulled into a bit of a false sense of security with the defence, how they did perform at the back end of last season, and maybe he thought he could reproduce that this season. But we all know as fans that these defenders are always going to revert back to type after initially performing well. So I think that I don't understand why people are just going to solely just point the finger on Antonio Conte when we all know what the actual real issues are here.
This is like, in terms of how we ended last season, I've said it many times, I'm Icelandic. All our teams perform in it this way exactly. They get up for it, they get psyched, and they overperform to a crazy level, but that cannot be sustained. It falls up really quickly and we never get it done. We're still proud of them. We love them. We're really happy for the passion and all of that. This is not an option in these top level competitions. You need to have sustained quality through many seasons, many competitions, each season, So this is not an option. This is why we see these really big improvements like last season and stuff like that. We saw improvement with Mourinho as well and so on. For me, once again, it's there's a good argument to be made that Conte and Tottenham was such a bad match. It's such opposites in culture and approaches, which is true. But when Conte came in, we were kind of fed up after Jose and Potts, that some of us realized, and I think we probably had a conversation about it, Sim and Ben, that this is exactly what Tottenham needs. This is exactly the type of force, this type of a powerful individual we need to come in and change the culture that has failed us with these other managers throughout the years, and so that was the whole idea. It wasn't we weren't going to evolve our club and squad. We were going to revolutionize our club and squad with Paratici and Conte together. That was the hope. That was why I said this is exactly what Tottenham needs, and I still stand on it. Conte and what Conte's message and what he wanted to try and do is still what Tottenham needs, which is the hard love. But
we don't want to hear it.
No, we're such spoiled brats that we just run to mommy, and mommy makes the bad man go away, and we're not no more mature for it, you know. So back to square one we go, you know. So yeah.
I think Rory Jennings put it really well when Conte first joined Spurs. He said, "We're now going to see what's stronger, Conteism or Spursism."
Exactly.
And I think we found out our answer pretty quickly.
We found out for sure, and I was convinced myself that Conte was too much of a force, you know, because I thought also Conte would simply his presence and his CV would put Levy in such a corner that there was no way around it. But here we go, you know, and when you have the staff, squad, and Levy basically colluding together to keep this cozy mediocrity culture, then I don't think there's no manager that's going to change that. I'm sorry, you know. So that's how I see it, at least, you know. So
all right, well,
who's going to do it, you know? So
that's also a very good point there. But look, let's move on.